All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to our webinar today. Before I get started, I just want to point out to you here on our housekeeping slide, you have entered the session in auto mute mode. Therefore, you will not be able to communicate with me directly during the session. However, there is a raise hand icon on your control panel, which will enable you to ask questions at the end when I open it up for Q&A. Today's session is part one of our practice management webinar for the Denali upgrade of prognosis. We are presenting two sessions for our practice management upgrade. What we're going to look at in today's session is the revenue cycle dashboard, the changes to the remittance posting, as well as other cash posting features such as advanced utilization, which has been fully added now at the patient level. Some changes with regards to electronic payment if you happen to use that feature, and then changes at the patient statement level. So first of all, we're going to look at the revenue cycle dashboard. There is a new icon when you get the upgrade that will display at the top of your, let me go ahead. This new icon will display at the top of your tray, of your homepage rather, in the system tray of icons. And this is going to open what loosely resembles the face sheet that you may be used to seeing in EMR if you also work on the clinical side. Now, if you're strictly a billing employee and have not seen the Encounter face sheet, this dashboard is going to be at the system level. And it is customizable as far as the squares of data that are displayed here. And what you're looking at on this screen is the default view that you will get during your upgrade as far as the predefined graphs. It also will always default to the current computer date. So for instance, that top row of fields is specific to the current date, which is why in this screenshot it currently says no data, because it was taken at the beginning of the day before stuff started accumulating. And this dashboard compiles the data in real time. So whenever you come in here and glance at it, there's an auto refresh within a 60-second interval. And that also is in conjunction with the filters that you may define. So in the upper left of your dashboard, there is the funnel icon, which you may be used to seeing in other screens of the system that allows you to build filters. Now here at the dashboard, it is limited as far as what you can filter these squares by. Because these squares that display on your dashboard are predefined graphs. So all you can do with regards to your user level filtering at runtime is the period, as well as doctor and location if you're a multi-doctor, multi-location practice. So when you go into the funnel, you do have the option of assigning a number of days and or a custom date period. Now that days field means you could say 90. Or 120, 100, whatever, and it will just count backwards from the current computer date. So you don't have to calculate on a calendar. Do I want to go back to August 15th? Do I want to go back to August 16th? Whatever. You can just simply say 90 days. Or, of course, as with most of our reports and graphs, you can specify an actual period, such as this week, this month, or an actual date range. It will default to all doctors, all locations, but if you would like to get individual totals, you can change that to a specific individual doctor or location. Now these filters here are defined at the user level. So even though your default dashboard when everybody logs in the morning is the same, throughout your logged in session, if you come in here and modify these filters, that's going to be for you only. When you log out, it will restore to the system defaults. Now, with regards to each individual square on your face sheet, you are able to customize the contents within there. Now, again, this customization will be at the system level as far as the content of each square, but the functionality within each square is going to be the same across the board for all users. So what we've done here is we're dissecting a single graph. You have the ability of zooming in. You also have an options menu, which will give you the opportunity of refreshing the data. That's in the graphical format because once you have zoomed in, of course, it's going to be static of the moment that you loaded your dashboard. But if data has been changing in the background, maybe you opened the dashboard and then you got a phone call, you were distracted for 15, 20 minutes, and you want to just refresh to make sure that it's absolutely current, you can click the refresh icon. If you want to export that data or the graph into a data format, such as an Excel spreadsheet, you can do that. And then you can also print what you're viewing. Within each cell also, because your screen real estate is limited by the size of your monitor, the detail of that cell is a tooltip. So if you notice here on number 3 on the slide, if you hover your mouse over the title of the cell, you will get a tooltip that gives you the full description as well as the filters that you've defined. You can, when you zoom in on that cell then, as you see here, it opens up in about 2/3 of the screen. So it makes it larger with the entire dashboard in the background. And then within the zoom version, you also have the ability, again, of exporting it to, or viewing it rather, in a tabular format. So if you notice the number 2 here, there's another icon that will take this graphical data and display it in a tabular format. Once you're in the tabular format, you have an icon that lets you export that data to a CSV file, which means comma separated values, so that if you then want to import that into Microsoft Excel or QuickBooks or any other external accounting application, you can do that. So basically what this dashboard is doing is giving you a graphical as well as a tabular view of your data at a real-time glance on one screen. And then within each of those sections, you can zoom in to look at it in more detail. For instance, now on the pie chart, you can zoom in on each individual area to get the specific data details underneath. And on this example, when you have a pie chart, the system automatically adds this legend along the right-hand margin that color codes each of the values represented. And so you can play with the data in real time. Maybe depending on whatever it is, in our example here, we're using the top 5 denials. Whatever project you're working on, you might want to exclude something. So you can simply click that indicator in your legend, and then the data will auto-refresh minus that value. So you see here how we have taken the top 5, we've removed managed care so that in real time we're now able to look at just the top 4. So that's actually using it as far as viewing it, zooming in, refining and refreshing the detail that you're looking at. Now to configure the cells, meaning what graphs are there for you to apply those filters against. Across the top of your dashboard now, all the way to the far right, you have the settings icon. The settings icon now, again, this is system level, so all of you who have access to it, if you make a modification here, it will be for everybody. You see number 2 here, it kind of looks like a little Sudoku table where you've got the grid of the 9 squares. Number 1 is selected by default, and that's why that is showing in red. If you've modified the squares in sequence, as soon as you've updated one, it automatically goes to the next. You do not have to do them in sequence. You can do whichever one you want. So you could immediately click number 8 or go to number 3. So you just click that cell, and then that's the one that you're configuring. And at the bottom, of course, you would save the change for that cell only. Now, if you're going through multiple cells, you don't have to save each one. So you could go, in theory, go through all 9 and then click save, and it would update all 9 of them. And what your options are here, as number 3 is showing you, is you can define a graph or a gauge. With regards to graphs, the Denali upgrade does include 20 standard key performance index graphs by default. So these will all be preloaded in your system when you get the upgrade. You are able to add to it. In our second session, we show you the graph design if you want to be able to create your own custom graphs. Those also would then become available in addition to the standard ones to embed into your dashboard. When you have chosen a gauge, however, this is a little more user definable and subjective. So the system is going to come with preloaded queries. You see here off to the right-hand side, you've got gauge 1 through 5. And then within those predefined queries, locally, you define the gauge values. Now what a gauge is, instead of a graph where you can have multiple values compared on an XY axis, as you see here in the lower right, our gauge, you define a threshold by entering a minimum maximum range. And then it's going to simply point to a green zone or the red zone. So maybe you want to see how well you're doing in a certain area. Maybe it's the 20th of the month and you want to see if you're reaching your goal. So for your claims billed, maybe you've defined a goal that you need to bill anywhere between 50 and 100,000 for that month. And you want to see here on the 20th of the day how you're falling in range. That's kind of how you would use the gauge as opposed to the graph. And then if you've made changes, you can always go back to the default view that you're going to get out of the box with the upgrade by clicking the default button at the bottom. So that's nice in case you make mistakes. Maybe you're playing around and customizing and all of a sudden a square quits working because you didn't define the gauge or the graph correctly. You can always go back to default. So that is your revenue cycle dashboard. That is available for all users who have access to the practice management side of Prognosis. There's no special rights or permissions needed. Now we're going to look at the first enhancement, which would be the user interface for the insurance EOB ERA screen. This is one of the major upgrade features on the practice management side. It allows for improved efficiency with regards to screen load time and the speed of navigating through the posting process. It also improves your editing options when you have to reopen a voucher. To accommodate those improvements, the user interface has been redesigned. So what you're looking at here is the new EOB ERA screen in comparison to what you have now. Now, if you notice in your existing version, there's three sections. You have the header, you have the claim detail, and then you have the charge detail for the selected claim. Those three components are now consolidated into two. Your header section remains the same, but the lower two sections of claim selection and charge line detail have been combined into a single accordion user interface. And by accordion, I mean it's expandable, collapsible, and this is where a lot of this improved efficiency comes from for you. In addition to this, if you notice the number 3 bubble, we've also incorporated now a single claim post option. And this really gives you a lot of great functionality because it's going to validate each claim as you go instead of waiting to the very end when you click ready to post, so that in real time you can go ahead and expedite adjudication of each transaction instead of waiting at the end and then having to go back and troubleshoot and find the errors. Also, by single claim posting, when it comes to fixing things, if there's something wrong and you reopen it, it does not impact anything else on that remittance. So that is simply the user interface design change. Now we're going to dissect that from top to bottom. At the header section, I mentioned there's really no changes at the header level other than your green and orange shading on the allocated amounts have been muted. If you notice here, it's kind of a bright neon green and orange in the upper right of your header section. It's still green and orange. They've just been softened to a more pastel version. Then when you get to your claim-focused icons, that is in between your header and your claim details, there's 3 new icons have been added, which gives you new functionality at the payment posting level. The first one is brand new to Prognosis, is the EOB icon. And this is going to allow you to print or reprint an individual claim level EOB in an HTML format for that particular selected claim. Now this will be available for payments only, so if it's a recoup, this icon would obviously not be available. But it does apply to primary and secondary EOBs. So if a primary payment has paid and you now want to rebuild the secondary, you can reprint that primary EOB to send off to the secondary. And similarly, if the secondary has paid and you want to rebuild the tertiary, you will be able to reprint the EOB. Now, of course, during the payment posting process, your secondary/tertiary claims are auto-generated when you initially post the primary or secondary payment. And that, of course, would include, by default, this EOB. And that remains unchanged. This is just an added functionality outside of that normal auto creation. If you want to reprint, you have that ability now. We've next added the insurance add option, which is the umbrella and the word add. This functionality currently exists, but only on your claim screen. And this is what gives the cash poster person now the ability of modifying insurance on a billed claim without having to stop the cash posting process, go to the claim and fix the insurance, then come back in and pick up the posting. So this is applicable on billed claims when the insurance needs to be modified. Maybe the patient registration forgot to update insurance, so it came across as Medicare United American. Medicare crossed over to Prudential AARP. So now you've got the AARP payment, but the claim or the patient claim doesn't have an AARP bucket. It says United American. So you need to change that in order to post the AARP payment. So you can do that now through the umbrella right within the cash posting stream so that you don't have to stop what you're doing when you're wearing that cashier hat. And then similarly, the third option there is the charge next write-off, next responsible balance. Currently, this is available either at a system level under your remittance menu or on the account screen. And again, you would have to stop what you're doing or go ahead and post the payment and then go to the account screen to write it off or move it to the next responsible person. If the cash posting person has that knowledge and it's within her or his workflow, that movement can go ahead and be done now all at once so that you don't have to do it in two components. So this is giving the cash posting person these additional functionalities to make everything complete at the moment of posting the payment. Now moving into the redesign section where our accordion is, it will auto default and collapse view as you're selecting the claims. Now, so selecting the claims process remains the same. And they are going to populate in the screen. The difference, though, now is they will continue to auto display collapsed, but notice you have far more than 4 here. If we look up here in your existing UI, that claim selection detail section in the middle only displays 4 at a time. And then you have the previous and the next and the lookup hyperlinks if you need to scroll to more than 4. Well, now it is going to retain up to 25 within the scrolling section. So you'll still have the pagination for your big, long remittances, but you will be able to see more at one time now in the screen. When you want to expand a claim row, then you can click anywhere on the highlighted row, and that will expand it to display the charge details right there in place. But before we get to that movement, the other icons here, you still have the trash can icon off to the left margin if you've chosen the wrong claim and you need to remove it because it's not actually included in that remittance, as long as you haven't posted it yet. So that part is unchanged. Then on the far right margin, we have the new post button, which is going to allow you to single claim post as you go through the voucher. And then once you have posted it, the label of that icon changes to the word edit, and there'll be a little green check mark to indicate that that has been posted. So the expanded version now of this UI, again, the benefit here to your hand-eye coordination is your screen, you're not going to have to move up and down on your screen. Choose a claim in the middle, move down to the bottom. So you're not going to have to keep moving your mouse and your eye movement. As you expand a claim within that viewing section, it's just going to expand in place. And the screen real estate auto adjusts based on the number of charge lines and the number of claims you've chosen. So basically you're able to just use your tab sequencing and just go through and allocate your money. As you update the one claim, the next one will open for you. So it helps you to gain some navigation speed as you're going through these large remittances. Now at the very bottom, you do still have ready to post. So the ready to post functionality is still here. It just has different meaning now, which we'll get into a little bit more detail when we get into the workflow of posting. But basically that is the user interface with regards to the design change. Mainly it's the accordion expanding and collapsing here at the line item level. You'll notice at the bottom the property that controls how many claims you can view here within this area. It defaults to 15. You can increase it all the way up to 25. So now we're going to look at that new feature of single claim posting. This is posting an individual claim without having to post the entire remittance. This gives you the ability of unposting and reallocating amounts for a single claim without impacting other payments on that remit. And all of the previous restrictions have now been removed when it comes to reallocating in that editing process. So in comparison here for the functional impact, again, your header and claim selection process is the same. You're able to post individual within a multi-payment voucher as well as edit and unpost it. Please note here in the green box, during your conversion, if you are already using what is called single claim edit, which is an existing version of the single claim post, but it has a lot of limitations now, you are using that now and you do not complete the transaction, then you have that open EOB message that displays on the home page as the visual reminder to you that you have reopened the remittance and not finished it. If you have any of those open on the night your upgrade gets applied, we are going to automatically reapply the payment how it was originally posted. So you may want to make note if you're in that situation, once you're aware that your upgrade's occurring, you want to get all of those cleared out. Allocation level validations will now apply in real time rather than waiting to the end when you say ready to post. Claim level posting is auto-saved when you collapse it within the accordion to go on to the next payment. That's where I mentioned your speed comes with the tab order. And it's an immediate adjudication of claim level responsibilities on your patient account. That's the real benefit here. There is one limitation at the system level that you need to be aware of within this single claim process. Even though it will do adjudication at the patient account level, your financial reports and your remittance voucher collection reports, which are system level, those are still only committed once you say ready to post, because the ready to post is at the overall voucher level. So basically, if we go back up here to your user interface, your header section and ready to post are kind of the same. Even though ready to post is all the way down at the bottom, it applies at the header level. That is system-wide at the voucher level as far as committing the data to your financial reports. In the middle here, all of your claim level detail, that is now separated out from that header section so that we can individually adjudicate each claim as we go, regardless of the overall remittance. So in your daily productivity world, if it's going to be a day where patient statements generate, you're in good shape whether you've posted that remittance or not, because every payment that you've individually applied is adjudicated at the patient account level. So even though the payment may not say posted yet, as far as the financial reports are concerned, the statement is accurate. If you want to run financial reports, that's the only limitation you need to worry about. Because the money is not actually committed to those analysis reports until you say ready to post. Now the workflow of mechanically posting the EOB, virtually unchanged. As far as the movement of the allocation of the values. So you're going to complete the header as always. Select the applicable claims as always through your claim binocular. Of course, then as number 3 shows, they're going to populate in collapsed view, and that top one will by default be highlighted. Now in my screen capture, for some reason the color did not get captured. So even though on number 3 here it looks like it's white, in the real world it's actually a citrus color. So it's going to be kind of a lime green yellow color for you as far as the one that you've chosen or that you've selected. And then as you expand it by clicking anywhere on that line, it brings up your charge posting rows. These are not redesigned as far as the sequencing. So allocating your dollar amounts will be the same. You just go through each field as always, and then single click the post button if you want. Now again, you don't have to use the single claim post because that is an additional explicit click of the post button. But if you do, it adjudicates that individual claim and does real-time validation then and there. So if you don't choose the post button and you just simply go to the next claim, which is your current workflow, then validation is still going to occur at the remittance level at the end. So you do have that choice to continue doing it as you are. But again, sometimes when you have a big remittance and you go through 100 transactions and then say ready to post, you start getting these pop-ups with validation errors. And then you have to go back through all those 100 claims and find which one is wrong. So it delays you. So that is where the benefit is of going ahead and taking that one extra click here on the post button to do real-time validation. And then at the very end, you are still, of course, going to stay ready to post to commit to your financial reports. Now, once it comes time to making a modification, if you posted a payment and now you need to fix it, you will still have the reopen button, so that process is unchanged. The logic, however, that occurs is greatly changed in the background. So visually to you, it's not going to look any different. But what it now does is only unapplies that one payment. So instead of unapplying every other payment in the remittance, it's only going to unapply the one you go in to edit. So reopening the voucher there at the bottom, all that does is, again, detach the money from your financial reports temporarily. It's going to move it back into an unapplied bucket at the overall financial analysis level. But on the individual claim, nothing is getting unapplied until you go in and click the edit button. And when you click the edit button, only that one single claim is unapplied. Nothing else on the remittance is affected. That's the biggest difference in this new workflow. Also, because of that, all previous limitations are now removed, meaning now if you try to do single claim edit, you can't modify dollar amounts or manipulate the allocation. All you can really do is move it from deductible to copay to non-covered. So you have a lot of limitations. No limitations apply now. So if you need to modify the dollar amount, change the contractual, add it back into the payment, show it as non-covered, whatever it is that you need to do to reconcile that transaction, you have total freedom now. And then you will reapply it, reclose the remittance. And at this point, since you've already posted the remittance once, there's not going to be any validation errors popping up. So it's kind of just a mechanical requirement to reopen, go and edit your claim, and then repost it. But all validation, again, is going to be at the single claim level. So that's the change to your insurance EOB, and that is both electronic remittances that get auto-uploaded as well as manually posting, because it's the same screen. It's just a matter of if the interface auto-loads those allocated amounts and you're still just validating them and saying ready to post, or if you're going to individually enter the data yourself. Now moving out of the insurance level and going to patient payment, we have an enhanced payment utilization feature now, both at the copay and at the patient receipt level. We've already got a partial advance tracking with regards to patient money that goes into advance and getting used elsewhere in the system. This is going one step further and giving you an exact source document or source payment utilization. So if a patient has given you 5 payments of $20, so they have a total of $100 in advance, but each of those $20 payments was on a different date of service, and the patient wants to know, well, what about that first $20 I gave you 3 months ago? Or what about the third $20 I gave you 2 weeks ago? How is that used explicitly? That's what this is now doing. It's going to the source payment and giving you full detail of every individual transaction from the source forward. So there's absolutely no guesswork as to how a payment is used. So this is accommodated through this new icon that will show up in your copay screen, or in this example, we're showing you on your account level screen in the copay table. This new icon opens up the table that you see here at the bottom. Now this table exists currently through your advanced tracking, but again, in the current version, it's not as detailed, or it's at a system level, and it's not really at a detailed level. It's just giving you this payment was moved here. This is showing if that payment that was moved from here to there had 3 transactions, this is now going to itemize all 3 of those transactions. The table here where it says type, number 2 on the diagram, that is the type of payment. EN means encounter, so a copay that was made out front at the time of service. AD means adjustment. This is happening through a system transaction. So the 2 lines that you see here with the type AD that are outlined in blue behind the number 4 bubble. This is an example where on May 21st, the patient made a payment of $75 at the front desk, and they applied it as a copay. So that went into the patient's unapplied advance as a $75 copayment. June 20th, a remittance came in, ERA 00421, but instead of a $75 copayment, the remittance said the patient only owed $31.84. So patient paid $75, but only $31.84 was used, so that left $43.16 still in advance. A month later, a different ERA came in that needed that $43. So in the patient's world, unless they really understand patient accounting, they paid you $75 on a visit because they thought they owed it. When the insurance paid that visit, however, they said the patient only owed $31.84. So the patient may think that you owe them $43, but then on a different claim, they owed the $43. So now if the patient comes back and says, well, how did you use that money? Why didn't I get a refund? I have an EOB here that says I didn't owe $75, but I paid $75. You can now give them an explicit detailed tracking of every adjustment. It also applies at the receipt level. Receipt, of course, is when you're getting a patient payment after the fact, when you're not at the front desk. The additional benefit here, if you notice number 1 on the screen, we've added a new line called advanced utilization on the header section. This advanced utilization will become immediately available to you on the screen in real time when you are posting this receipt to advance. That is an improvement over the existing workflow where you have to first post the receipt to advance and then go out under a different menu option called Use Advance. And it's 2 separate transactions. You're now able to do it all at the same time in a single transaction from the receipt screen. Now you do still have to post the receipt, but then that immediately gives you this allocate advance option so you can go ahead and move it. And the movement of the advance is not changed. That's the same workflow you already have, but it's now going to be trackable again at the detailed transactional level. So when you go into the used advance hyperlink, it's going to again give you a line by line as to how that money was utilized. So that if the patient calls you and says, well, how did this money get applied? You can tell them. So it's the same process. It's just a matter of if the source was a copayment or if it was a receipt. Now we have switched around the user interface when you're moving this money through advance. The functionality is the same. It's just visually on your screen. We've changed it so that the credits are on top and the debits that are outstanding are on the bottom. In the existing version, it's reversed. You have the balances the patient still owes on top, and then you choose the payment on the bottom. So that is patient payment advanced utilization. Full accountability now from the source of the payment to its adjudication. Now, electronic payments, this is a functionality that we weren't teaching on a webinar basis, but it has been around for a while, so you may already be using it in your practice. This is for credit card payments, of course, but it's been enhanced. So if you're already using it, we're going to discuss the enhancements. If you haven't used it yet, you can contact technical support and have it added. We now have multiple vendor support. So we have a new property in the upgrade that is going to allow you to define the vendor, which is replacing the existing property. When we originally started supporting credit card payments, it was through a single vendor. So that property is now obsolete and replaced with one that allows you to define the vendor you're using. This also, now we have the card on file provision, which is at a merchant level. So when you are using e-payment, you have to set up a merchant for the doctor, for the clinic. You may have multiple merchants depending on how you do business. So this card on file provision is at the merchant level. So if you do have multiple merchants within your practice, the card on file has to be created at each merchant level for each patient. But the card on file provision now means patients can go onto the portal and make payments online through the card on file. You can schedule payment plans for the card on file. So it makes it a lot more convenient for taking payments, even on the receipt screen or the copay. If the patient forgets their credit card or they owe a balance and they've been ignoring their statements, so you call them, it's like, I need you to make this payment. Can I use the card on file? You can do that. Because of all of these changes, we've added new validations that will occur at the demographic, at the employer level. Sometimes the security code is needed, sometimes not. So in that property, it is now optional as opposed to being mandatory. Some merchants need it, some do not. And because of the new provision, there's some changes on the screen with regards to manual credit card entry versus e-credit card entry. And actually, this top screen capture is incorrect, so I will be updating the PowerPoint. I just found that out yesterday. The card number is now encrypted at all times for HIPAA. So as you see in the middle example, whether it's e-pay only or manual, you're going to have the first part of the credit card number will be masked through X's, and all you can do is enter the last 4 digits. With regards to the e-payment screen, this is where you see the new checkbox to save card information. So the e-payment itself isn't different as far as this screen if you're already using it. You notice in the upper right is where you would choose the specific merchant. That is all the same logic you currently have. The difference here is we've added the Save Card on File box. And so on the lower right, when you have saved a card on file, you will now have to choose the credit card you want, whether it's going to be the one on file or if you want to enter a different one at that time. And the payment plan processing, if you use payment plans, we've also added the card on file option here. So if you want those scheduled payments that the patient owes monthly to be auto created, you can have that provision set up now. There is a property, if you notice the third bullet point at the top, that controls whether this will happen. So if you want to utilize this feature, this property is not going to be turned on by default. So you would have to, if you have configuration access under your user role, set this property. You would have to have saved your card on file in the step above, and then come in here and assign what card on file you want that payment plan to auto-create receipts for. You also have the option now of emailing the reminders for your default. If your patients who have payment plans default on their monthly payment, you can email them that reminder. And then that brings us now to our patient statements, which has also been enhanced at a few different levels. Smart tags have been introduced now to replace the stationary clinic location tags. Basically, this just means that there's a lot more flexibility from the design perspective. You don't have to worry on the user end, is this a patient statement, is it an attorney statement, is it a guarantor statement, and make sure that you have the appropriate tags in there. The system's going to handle all of that now for all statement types. There's also some refined send by options, including email, refined dunning messages, and filter by options when you're setting up your bulk statement job. When you are ordering statements ad hoc initially, however, this is under your reports statement option. There's a user interface change. You notice in the lower left here, the one outlined in pink, your existing statement screen, your filters are in 2 sections based on if you're doing a claim level or a charge code level statement. Well, in the new version here in the upper right, it's consolidated because of those smart tags that I just mentioned we've introduced. It's applicable now system-wide, whether it's claim level or charge level. So you don't have to distinguish that. That has simplified this screen. You also notice in the upper right, there is a settings button, which we're going to look at a little bit in case you need to modify the parameters governing your statements. You don't have to leave this screen to do so. We've also now given you the ability of customizing statement type 3. Now, statement type 3 is the system default for charge level statements. So if you run charge level statements, you can now customize that output. And then we've added 2 new statements, type 4 and 5. This is what the settings looks like. So if you need to go in and modify relevant settings, you can do that up here through the little gear icon instead of having to go under the configuration screen. This does, of course, need to have the appropriate rights. There's 2 new properties that have been added here, gap in days, so that based on whether it's a patient statement or a guarantor statement, if you want to define intervals between statements by default, you can. Patient statement templates now. I mentioned statement type 3 can be customized. You would have to go through technical support to have this customized, but this is your charge code level detail. You can now manipulate it or have the columns rearranged, removed, added the way you want for the statements that you're sending to your patient. And now we've got 2 new statements added. Statement type 4, total charges column, we're going to reflect patient and insurance combined. And then at the bottom, it shows patient and insurance details aging-wise, segregated at the patient level, insurance level, and your column details also will have a patient column and an insurance column. But the far right net is going to be combined. So for patients that are maybe a little savvy and they understand the distinction between an insurance balance and a patient balance, you might want to spell it out for them. And then statement type 5 is your existing default statement 2, which is your claim level. This is the most common one used in the system. Number 2 is. We've duplicated that and added a new running balance column so that if the patient, again, is trying to track through their AR history, in the lower right, it'll get them to their existing current outstanding net due. With regards to the scheduled process for bulk statements, some changes here when you're setting up the bulk process. Mode now supports email in addition to being able to print them. You also can define different jobs, different parameters for each statement type. So maybe you want a patient statement, a guarantor statement, an attorney statement, but one of them you want the new type 4, one of them you want the standard type 2, whatever. So you can now create mass processes based on your needs. And those smart tags, again, are what's making this possible. For email options, of course, the statement is protected health information at the financial level. It will be password protected. So if you're going to email your statements now, the patient will get the email with an attached PDF. The attached PDF will be encrypted with the password. The password rule is going to be based on the statement type. So if it is a patient statement, the password to open the details would be the patient's date of birth, all 8 digits with no slashes, followed by the first 4 letters of the patient's last name. Guarantor statements is going to be the date of birth, followed by the first 4 letters of the guarantor's last name. And if it's an attorney statement, it will be the attorney's phone number. So you would have to have the phone number entered into your attorney master. Outstanding reminder letters. There is now a field added for statement count more than. So if you want to be only generate the letter after X number of statements have gone through. That provision exists like in your handover process. If you use collection agency handover, one of the criteria is you have to have sent 3 statements. So we're taking that logic and putting it here at the reminder letter as well. And then there's been a label change only, not a logical change, with regards to financial class. The label is now going to indicate suppressed or not suppressed, as opposed to the current label of collection, non-collection. If you're a relatively new client, you're probably not even worried about that because we have the collection agency handover workflow. But older clients, before we had collection agency, used financial classes for that purpose, so they would suppress statements if they were doing it as a collection. So logically, it's still the same. We've just modified the label so that it's less confusing for new clients learning the system. So if you do want to suppress statements in certain cases, not necessarily for collection, but maybe it's the doctor's best friend or it's a VIP and so you don't want to bill them, you can still do that through the financial class logic. So those are the changes with regards to this first session of practice management at the payment level and the statement level. Now, the upgrade, what's next, we repeat this in all of our sessions in case you only attend one of the 5. But just so that you're aware, when you are scheduled for your upgrade, you will know 7 days out. When you log into Prognosis with your user ID and password, this pop-up will start occurring 7 days before your upgrade. We are updating clients daily. We in education and technical support do not have the schedule because that comes through our engineering team. If you do have any other questions, however, you can of course contact technical support. When the upgrade gets applied, all of the new features will have these new pop-up bubbles that summarize what the feature is. This is available for you every time you go to the screen unless you say don't show me again. If you say hide, it hides it for that session only. And the next time you come in here, it's going to pop up again. At some point, we may be incorporating videos for these new features, so there would be a third hyperlink that says click here to view the video. There's always the new bubble at the top for 30 days after the upgrade's applied, so that you can go into the release notes through a single click. Even after that icon disappears, however, your release notes are always part of the system. We're dealing with practice management here, so when you go under the help topic release notes, these will be in the purple column called billing release notes. And of course, we have our resource center that has user guides and videos. Under the documentation user guide, you can get a PDF version of this PowerPoint that we've just been discussing if you need to download it or print it. And then there is a recorded version of this webinar as well under the webinar video heading. So that is the content of today's session. For those of you present, are there any questions? Okay, I'm not seeing anybody raise their hand, so I'm going to wish you all a good week and thank you for attending. And as always, we do have our email there at the bottom if you need to contact training with any suggestions or questions or contact technical support. Thank you very much.